Hey everyone, Charlie here. This is just a quick tutorial and reminder for the Zoom recorders. So just so you know which ones that we have in the store and which ones you will most regularly be using on the course, we have the Zoom H5 and we have the Zoom H6. Now they're very, very similar, but they do have some slight differences. So I think probably a good place to start, if we just pull Zoom H6 away, let's focus on the Zoom H5. So the Zoom H5 is a really, really great, nifty little recorder. It is perfect for if you're kind of running and gunning and you're kind of out in more kind of harsh weather environments. It's got a rubbery casing that kind of gives it some element of weatherproofing, as well as these little bars so you can actually connect it to a belt hoop or something like that. So what I'm going to do, we'll go through each recorder in turn. Just going to turn it around and talk you through all the kind of different features that you have available on a recorder like this. So starting on the front, most important things kind of on here are your main controls down here. So whenever you kind of want to go for a record, you have your record button down here, and then we have our shuttle control. So if you've made any recordings, you can play them and pause them. You can skip between them using those two buttons, and you can stop them here. And then here we have our gain input knobs for our XLR input 1 and our XLR input 2. So just to explain quickly kind of what gain is, this is how much of a boost you'll digitally be giving your signal from your recorder. And this is the same across both recorders. So if I was to put it to 10, that would be giving it the maximum amount of gain. So plus 10 decibels, plus 10 dB. However, that would increase the amount of noise in the signal. So that is something to remember. And that correlates to each input. So we've got one up here for this is a stereo module. So both the H5 and the H6 have these. They are detachable, so you don't always have to use them. So as you can see here, you've got a little button here and a little button here. You push them both in at the same time, pull away, and it detaches like that. So you've got this little kind of chip element here on the base that kind of slots into a slot on the top here. If you just simply slot that on like that, so it's got give it a quick wobble test, then that's ready to go. And once again, you've got your gain control up here. Cool. So we'll dig into this a little bit more until we get to operation, but these little buttons here, so if left and right are lit on, then that means that this mic is active. And for 1 and for 2, they correlate to your inputs. So in terms of what the H5 can record, you've got one XLR input, a second XLR input, and then you've got the stereo module at the top. So you've got 4 kind of recording options here. Cool. So anyway, enough about the general interface and operation. Some of you, I'm guessing, must be wondering how this actually turns on and how it operates. So on this side of the Zoom, we've got a little kind of pull button here. You've got hold, and you've got this little on symbol here. You grab this tab and you pull it back towards you and hold it down. Eventually the screen will light up and it will start accessing the SD card inside and will open up a menu for you. So other things to bear in mind, you've got on this side here, you've got the USB kind of connection. So if you don't want to plug your card in anywhere, or you want to run plug-in power, so plugging this in for a USB plug so you can power it rather than doing battery power, then you can plug it in there. Then you've got your volume control for your headphones, which is your little headphone jack here. I'd recommend if you're recording, mixing, or doing anything with the Zooms or any audio recorder at all, always wear headphones because it will give you the most accurate signal. Where the volume comes into it is quite often people will have this set too loud, and that will make them think that, oh God, the signal's too loud, and you'll start mixing to what you're hearing in your headphones. However, that is not the accurate way to do it. The accurate way to do it is through this little screen here. So, as you can see, we've got one lit up right now, but at the moment there's no microphone attached to one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that and turn that off. And then if I hit left and right, this will become active. And if I give this a little bit more gain, a little bit more, and I snap in front of it, like so, you can probably see the bars beginning to dance up and down. And that means that I'm actually getting a signal on here. Okay. So remember, if you've got your module attached and other microphones, if you want to have certain things active and certain things active, if you click it off and there's no red lights, it's not recording. If you click it on, then it's active and it's ready to record. So on this site, this is how we access our menu. You can also have a remote plugin, but we don't have any remote controls for this currently. And also where you put in your SD card. So if I just open up this little tab here where it says SD on the outside, inside here, if I just push down, you have a kind of standard SD card. All the kits come with an SD card that you can use kind of already, all ready to go. And I'll show you how to format this within here in just a second. So to load in your SD card, load it up so the symbology is facing upwards. Slot it in, push it in so you get a little click, and then it will hold it. And it's the same to take it out again. Push in, and then it will disengage the lock. Push that in, and then just make sure that this is sealed up nice and tight, as this will help prevent any kind of water, wind, or dirt getting into this port here. And that's the most important because that's where all our data is stored. So, other thing, just to kind of note, on the back here, this is where you can screw this into a tripod or kind of on top of a camera, depending on what screw mount you have. And also you have your battery power on the back. So I'll just quickly open this up. So a H5 is a smaller recorder and obviously isn't recording to many channels, so it doesn't eat as much power. So it takes 2 AA batteries. The H6, on the other hand, takes 4 AA batteries, so operates slightly differently. Cool. So we're powered on, we've got our batteries, we've got our card in. So now we're ready to access our menu and start setting up. So if I hit menu, you'll have various different folders and things that we can kind of adjust on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through all the different things that you'll kind of need to be doing to set up before you can start recording. So how I'm controlling this on the menu is there is this little shuttle control, which is the same on both Zooms. You can go up, you can go down, and it also pushes in, and that's how you select. So that's how I'll be operating this throughout this tutorial. So going right back up to the top. So going through the menu system. So when you hit menu, the first thing you'll see is project. And this will basically let you look at what you've currently been recording as your kind of main project. At the moment, there's a few recordings in here, which ultimately, if we're doing a new project, we don't want. So what I'm going to do is we're going to scroll past and scroll all the way down to SD card. Hit select SD card. Then we're going to hit format. So when you format a card, what this means is that it will wipe everything off there and it will set it up with the needed file structure to record those files. So we'll hit format. Are you sure? Yes, I am. I don't want those recordings. And it will just take a little moment whilst it formats itself. There we go. Excellent. Cool. And then to go back up a stage, so at the moment we're looking at the SD card. If I press menu again, that'll take me back to where we were. So our project is kind of where we're currently recording. And then what you have in both Zooms is folders. So if I'm doing sound notes and I'm figuring out a way to separate these out and make it easier for my editor to find all of these assets, folders is a really useful way to do this. So in folder 1, I could be selecting folder 1 and then it will tell me that's where I'm recording. If I go in and I go down and I select folder 2, then if you see down here, it says folder 2, which means that all of my recordings will then be going into folder 2. So this is really, really useful if you are organized with your folders. So if I said I was recording in folder 1 and I was recording kind of my sound recordings for the day, I was on set. But afterwards, I wanted to do some Foley gathering or do some sound effects gathering. Maybe I'd then go down and select folder 2. And then on my sound kind of note sheet, I would say folder 1 is all my on-set dialogue, all my on-set recordings, and folder 2 is all of my extra recordings for Foley and sound effects gathering. So it's a really, really useful little tool just to kind of keep things organized and find stuff a little bit quicker. So then we've got in and out. So low cut, comp and limiter, these are things that will attenuate and adjust the signal within here, we're not going to go into those today, as the most important ones for you to know are Phantom and plug-in power. So let's talk about Phantom power first. So let's click on here. So it says in 1 and 2. So Phantom power is available on input 1 and input 2. So Phantom power is required for when you are using a condenser microphone. A condenser microphone needs what's called phantom power running through it. It needs an electrical charge in order for a sound signal to be recorded, and that is minus 48. It's 48 volts. So if I go into here, you have all of these different voltages, but the standard voltage for pretty much all modern microphones now that require phantom power is plus 48 volts. So you hit that and keep your voltage set there. Then in here, you have input 1, input 2, and all. And we can decide whether to turn these on and off. So the typical shotgun microphones that we'll be using, like the NTG2, these would be microphones that require phantom power. So make sure, if you're not getting any signal, this is one of the most common things that people miss. So make sure to activate your phantom power so the microphone can actually generate a signal. Okay, so we'll hit menu a couple of times, a few times, and take us back to plug-in power. So plug-in power, this is just so if you've got this plugged in with your mini USB kind of to main USB into a plug in the wall, this is just to make sure that it is actually going to accept power. So if for some reason you're seeing your battery tick down, you've got it plugged into the wall, jump into this area in the menu and just make sure that that's clicked on, because sometimes it may not want to accept power. So we'll hit menu, go back a couple. So recording. So this is all about our recording formats and how we want to basically go ahead with things. So in here you can name your projects and kind of add elements of naming elements. So there's the default zooming, or you can do stuff by date, whichever is your preference. It's not too important simply because a lot of the time you'll be relabeling this anyway in post-production. The main thing we want to focus on first though is our recording format. So I click into here. So we've got a variety of formats in here. So we've got 44.1 kilohertz and 16-bit. So this is our sample rate and our bit depth. So this basically assesses the quality of what we're going to be recording at. So 44.1 kilohertz, 16-bit, it's usually what you'd hear like kind of on an audio CD. But for filmmaking, we want to have a lot more leeway with our sound. We want to make sure that we can design it and stretch it and play around with it in post and do some kind of fun stuff for it with sound design. So typically you'll want me to go into the highest setting in the Zoom H5, which is the 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. A really easy way to remember it is that your sample rate is 48 and your bit rate is half. So it's 48, half of 48 is 24, 48, 24, and that is the pairing. That is kind of standard. There are recorders coming out now that are recording at kind of higher bit depths, like 32-bit, but currently this is considered roughly a standard for the moment. Okay, so I'm going to hit our select and it will display on the bottom, as it does with kind of all the settings, what we've selected here. So if I'm hovering over record format, I've got 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. So don't want to fiddle around with auto record. Pre-record can be quite useful. So this is if you have to suddenly hit record and you need some lag time. So it will actually be recording a few seconds before you hit that record button. So it will be constantly recording and deleting elements there. So if somebody starts talking and you're not too ready and you need to press record, it happens quite often if you're trying to capture something off the cuff in a documentary type scenario, then that can be very, very useful. Okay. So we are pretty much nearly there. So we've turned our Zoom on, we've got battery power, we've formatted our card, we've checked our recording format. And we have assessed whether our microphones need power or not. All that we have left to do is plug in our microphones and hit record. And at the moment you can see on here, it's recording as an empty folder as I formatted it. And currently, with what I have set to record here, it is displaying how many hours, minutes I have available to record. So now I have that active. If I hit record, it'll start recording and counting down at the top here, recording for a few seconds. Then if I hit the record button again, just give a little message, then it will say Zoom 001. Then if I wanted to listen back to that, I could press play and listen back to that. And then that will just sequentially go Zoom 0001, 002, 003. So it just goes up kind of sequentially. So you can kind of sense or use that as a notation system to sense where that is in the order. Okay, so other things to bear in mind on this display of kind of what you're seeing here. I've just adjusted the volume. So if I tip this down so you can see. So you've got your recording element at the top, and it's saying it's coming from the XY module, showing us our battery, which is very nearly dead. What folder we're recording to, what our last recording file number was, and then we've got our audio bars here for how strong the signal is, which is not very strong as the microphone is pointing away from me. And then down here, we've got which input has phantom power. Also, we have our recording format. So you're ever unsure that you've got the right settings, just look at this screen and all of your information is in these different locations on your screen. So a basic checklist to remember of what you need to do. Make sure you've got battery power or plug-in power ready to go. You've got your memory card, format your memory card, set your recording format to 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. Remember 48 and half of that is 24, and that's the pairing that you need. Set prereq if you need, and make sure you're on the right folder to record, and then you're away. You're ready to record. Okay, so that's pretty much everything kind of around operation with the Zooms, and pretty much all of that transfers over to the H6s. So they're very, very similar. The only thing you need to bear in mind is that this can record 4 XLR inputs, whilst this can only record 2. However, for most of your productions, if you're kind of out on set, a lot of the time the H5 is going to be kind of more than enough. Even though this is the slightly kind of beefier one, the sound quality you'll get out of them will be pretty much exactly the same. So don't worry about kind of which one you need to use over the other. However, there are things that we haven't talked about yet in terms of, if I'm getting out this Zoom, what other bits of equipment do I actually need in order to get audio, which is a really good question. So we may have our Zoom kind of here, but we need something to connect to a microphone. That's where an XLR cable comes in. So you've probably seen these before. These are pretty standard across kind of the film, TV and music industry for plugging in microphones. So kind of like most cables, we've got a male end and we have a female end. So the male end is the bit that goes into the Zoom. So I'll show you how that lines up now. So if I just twist this around, my XLR cables that I've got at home have got this little arrow, but often the XLR cables that we've got in the store have got this similar kind of curve-like shape that's like an indented groove on the top of the cable. That shows you how you should be orientating it to go up to the top to slide in. And that's really useful when we've got our Zoom here, because what I can do is look, I've got input 1 here and input 2 here. I've got a little arrow or the indented groove. I slot that in so it lines up with this little divot here, and then push that in until it's kind of in there nice and firm. And I can just simply pull that back out again quite easily. If you're struggling with that, there are actually 3 pins in the head here. And if I just twist this up here, you can see how it's got this different like little pattern of 3 here. So that lines up with these 3 pins. So if this is worn away or you're kind of really struggling to figure out how to orientate it, then you can look at the patterns where the pins are supposed to go and the pins themselves and line them up that way. And they just slide in nice. However, never force this, as it will damage the connections quite badly, and that can cause real problems. So we've got our Zoom, we've got our cable, and it's connected up. So the next thing that we need is a microphone. So this is a Rode NTG2. So this is what is called a shotgun microphone, and this is very standard in terms of kind of what is used on a lot of sets across the world and the industry. So just put that to one side. So if I just pull this off, so this is a shotgun microphone. Now this is a condenser microphone, which means it will need phantom power. So remember to set that within your settings when you're setting up to go for a record. And as you can see here, it's got a male and it's got the same pins that are going to match into here. But why do we use a shotgun microphone? So as you can see, it's very long and very thin. And basically how this operates is it's extremely directional. So if I was to point this at myself, then you'd be hearing kind of just me. If I was to swing it away, then you'd be hearing wherever the tip of the microphone is pointing towards. It has a very narrow cardioid pattern, is what it's called, which is the pickup pattern. So in terms of this, it's very, very narrow. Whilst on a dynamic microphone or like a vocal microphone that you usually see kind of singers singing with, that has a slightly broader pickup pattern. So it's less, doesn't stretch as far, but picks up a broader area in front of it. This is narrow, but has a long reach, which is great for keeping it out of your actors' faces, away from lights, and so you're not casting shadow. And this is what usually sits atop a boom pole. So what we want to do is get our female end and the male end of the microphone, and looking at the pins and also the little groove that you've got in the base of here, and the little groove that you have on a XLR cable, line those up, push them together until you hear a nice resounding click. Give it a little wobble test, and then that is in there nice and tightly. Now, when it comes to de-rigging this, once again, never try and force it. But with these, on this end, when you're connected to a microphone, this is, since you heard that click, it has locked in place. And what you're seeing has locked in place is this element here. There's a little lever. So if I push that down with my thumb, so it's pushed all the way down, then it slides away clean. But if I slide that back in, you hear that click, then I give that a little tug, that's not going to move anywhere. And that's to stop the connection coming loose during some of your setups. So we've got our microphone, we've got a cable, we've got our Zoom all set up. However, if I hold a microphone like this, all my sweaty hands handling this microphone are going to go and transfer that noise onto the recording, which we really, really don't want. So what else do we need? We need a pistol grip. So this is a shock absorbent element that will hold your microphone in this cradle up here. So what you do is just grab your microphone, and this slides in like so. He says, struggling with it immensely. There we go. You slide it all the way through, like so. So then, hence why it's called a pistol grip, as your microphone looks like a bit of an old shoot bang. So, but what if I'm outside and there's wind? Then that's where one of these comes in. So there are various types of these, but this is basically a wind diffuser. It's also known as a dead cat, simply because the larger, fluffier ones, when laid out flat, look like a cat that's been squashed by a car. But all we do with this is we slide that on, and then this is going to give us any protection against breath kind of hitting this. It will help diffuse it, or any kind of heavy wind. It will help diffuse that and not give you that horrible rustly sound that you usually get on a microphone when you're getting wind noise. So with that all together, then what you would do is, if you had a boom pole, so you can pistol grip this and gather sound effects this way, but maybe I need to suspend it above an actor, a kind of a typical way, and boom this microphone in, then on the base here, you have a screw mount where you would attach your boom pole. And we'll be going through booming and boom technique with you in a separate session. So don't worry about that. But this is the port where you connect your boom pole to your pistol grip. Cool. So that's setting up a microphone, specifically a condenser shotgun microphone, kind of with your Zoom H5 or H6. Another thing just to note is that you've got these little microphone nodules here. So this microphone is a XY stereo pair. So this is really good for getting atmospheres when you want to get that broad stereo range of sound, whilst these are much better for capturing voice and performance and mono-based sounds. So something where you're not going to getting a left or a right element to it. It is just all one compact audio file. This is a slightly different stereo module. It is a 360 stereo module, hence why it is kind of shaped like a little ball, and you've got left and right here. And this captures an element of kind of more 360 audio all the way around. So its cardioid pattern is 3D in its aspect. Whilst with this is a stereo module, but it is more directional. So if I was to point this towards, then that's what it would be recording. If I was to point it up, then that's what I'd be getting. Point it towards myself, it would give me more of a strong signal. So in terms of that, these two microphones are great for getting atmospheres, ambience, room tone, those kind of elements where you want that kind of rich stereo image in your audio. But they are very, very different. So have a play around with them, see which is better. See if I was in a quiet woodland, for example, that had a really rich atmosphere and there wasn't really a lot of noise around me, it was quite isolated, I'd probably use this because I know that the soundscape is safe all the way around this and I'm going to be getting some really interesting sounds. If I was wanting to record like a street, but there was a building site or something noisy on one side of the street, but I wanted to get the ambience of the other side of the street, then I would probably use this because I could point it towards where I wanted to be and try and eliminate more of the sound behind me. However, if there's a construction site, just avoid it because it is literally the worst when it comes to recording audio. So remember, setting up, power, formatting your card, recording format, setting your phantom power depending on what microphone you're using, connecting your XLR to whichever input you're using, making sure that these little input lights are correct and you've got some gain in there so you can actually see some levels kind of happening here. Then this connects into your microphone at the back, make sure it's got that resounding click so the connection is solid, and then get that in a pistol grip so you're not getting any kind of handling noise. And if you're outside and it's windy, then make sure to put this on your kind of wind baffle to eliminate that wind noise. And then it is all about just listening and watching your levels. If you're recording voice, you're wanting to aim between, on the dials, -12 and -6. And that is a really healthy place to be for recording voice. But yeah, that is pretty much all the basics covered. So this is kind of how you would typically go about doing your setup. Often I would do this the night before a shoot and get all of this done. So I would charge my batteries, format my card, test everything, make sure everything's working, set up my folders and things in my Zoom, along with noting down on my sound notes what that's going to be. So it's all very, very organized. So when you get on set, it's simply about getting this all physically set up and then you're ready to record. Cool. Thanks everyone. If you have any questions, as always, just drop me an email. I'm more than happy to go through this in more detail. But hopefully this has been either a good reminder or a good introduction for you to get out there and start recording some sounds. So thanks everyone. I'll see you all very, very soon. Bye.